Successful data collections aren't conducted out of the blue. They're made out of careful planning and efficient resource utilization, even with limited resources. I am Jay Carizo, a local governance and data specialist, and your learning companion in this module. This module is about data gathering in resource constrained LGUs. It has two sessions. The first session is about taking stock of available data and identification of data gaps. And this session, which is addressing resource related challenges and constraints. This session has four parts. The first is a presentation of the session objectives. The second is the identification of factors that define the data gathering budget, and a discussion on the challenges that may impact the data gathering resources, as well as a discussion on how to address resource related constraints. Session has two objectives. The first is to identify the factors that define the data gathering budget, while the second is to identify and help mitigate resource related challenges and constraints in data gathering. So, what are the factors that define the data gathering budget? There are actually a number of factors, but in general, we can classify them into four. The first is personnel, then we have technology, logistics, and data quality. All of these create a huge impact in the data gathering budget. So let's discuss these factors one by one. Let's start with personnel. Personnel or human resources refer to the data gathering team, the members of the data gathering team, their capacity, and of course, professional fees. Personnel costs account for 40 to 60% of the data gathering budget or costs. It is usually dependent on the number of personnel that needs to be employed, the structure of the team, and also whether or not the members will be coming from the LGU and the remuneration of the team members. Of course, we also ask about the training needs required because capacity building through trainings also help the team effectively carry out their functions. Technology involves methodology, research design and methodology, the capturing device, and the like. So we ask, what is or are the data gathering methodology or methodologies that will be used? What are the kind of trainings that should be given to the members of the research team in relation to the methodology? And the data capturing device that should be used. Should it be paper and pen or gadgets? The questions are necessary because they make a huge impact on budget resource allocation. For example, in data gathering that involves a sample size or a sample of population, the cost may be cheaper compared with the enumeration of the whole population in a particular area. Similarly, while paper and pen may look cheaper compared to the use of gadgets, in the long run, gadgets actually are less expensive compared to the use of paper and pen as capturing devices. This we will be discussing further in the succeeding slides. Then we discuss logistics, which involves operation costs, transportation costs, and supplies. So in this discussion, we ask, where will the data collection be? because the farther the research site, the more expensive it will be. Of course, transportation costs will be at play here. And also, what are the supplies needed? Are there coordination tasks that should be done? Should this be done beforehand? And what resources do they apply? And of course, the most common question is, do the resource persons need to be remunerated? If so, how much would the remuneration be? Data collection in urban settings are generally different compared to those in rural settings. An enumerator in an urban area, for example, can accomplish 10 questionnaires a day, but his or her counterpart in the rural areas may just accomplish 5 or 8 or even 2, given the population density. Likewise, data collection under the COVID-19 pandemic has different requirements. Enumerators must be equipped with personal protective equipments such as masks and disinfectants. This therefore should be considered in the budget allocation. The last is data quality, which includes quality assurance mechanisms, research instruments, and the like. So we ask, what are the quality assurance mechanisms? Will there be audits immediately after the end of the data gathering? Will there be spot checks or monitoring supervisors? And for the data that will be gathered, will there be validation? How will this be done? Should this be presented back to the population, to the communities, if it is a survey or an enumeration? What are the system checks to be employed and how? There are also challenges that may impact the data gathering budget, apart from those that we mentioned. So these include the geophysical challenges, the cultural or behavioral challenges, information and communications technology related challenges, and politicization. For the geophysical, we mentioned in part that uh, the distance has an impact in data collection budget. Of course, the terrain, the area coverage, and the weather. Mountainous terrain requires more preparations, not only the physique of the enumerators, but also his or her security, particularly in areas that are um, having problems with peace and order. Weather, of course, has an impact because during rainy season, it may be difficult to gather data, especially in rural areas. Cultural and or behavioral challenges are also present and may impact the budget. For example, there are certain traditions that must be observed when dealing with indigenous people. Some would present gifts and talk first with the elders. Also, there are communities that are averse to data gathering. So, how should this be done? And lastly, some respondents also has economic expectations, particularly because of some programs of the government that there are questions being asked and afterwards there are benefits that are being given. ICT related challenges generally refers to telephone and internet connectivity. First, of course, is coordination. So, with limited telephone connectivity, coordination with the target population or target research sites may be difficult. Or if the data gathering will be done using phone calls or online interviews, then these really are important factors to be considered. So instead of online interviews, face to face will be necessary. Lastly, is politicization, and these include practices that could affect quality data or data quality, such as the being apple of the politicians. And of course, there are cases when data gathering partners are politically biased. So the effect, of course, will be on the quality of data, especially if there are questions or items in the instruments that involve or has different interpretations or can be interpreted uh, politically. So how do we address resource constraints? First, we identify opportunities for collecting data. For example, there are activities like program implementation, meetings that can be used for data collection. The attendance, for example, the attendance sheet could include not only names and contact numbers, but also gender as required by the Gender and Development Act. Or, in addition to that, you can also add age and the like. Note, however, that a balance between expedient data gathering and respondents' willingness to participate should be observed. Also, a balance between fast and cost effective data gathering and data quality should be carefully considered. Second, consider various data collection designs and methodologies. Would a telephone interview be enough, or an online Zoom, Skype, or Teams or Meets meeting be enough? Or face to face is really necessary? Because the former, the online or telephone interviews, could cost less. Also, should it be a survey with a sample size or a series of different surveys from different LGU offices? If so, why not just conduct community-based monitoring system? Do we need data on school children? Why not just visit the school instead of going house to house to interview the children? However, ensure that data quality will not be sacrificed, and include also in the consideration the geophysical, sociocultural, ICT related, and politicization challenges that we just discussed. Third, maximize available and underperforming personnel in the local government unit. Why not encourage the personnel with lesser tasks to spare their time for a data gathering gig? But of course, ensure that these are trained properly or they are trained properly to be able to effectively perform their tasks as data collectors or as validators. Fourth, enjoin field personnel to participate, particularly the barangay health workers, the community affairs officers, and the like. They're already in the field, so why not maximize them if possible? Ensure, however, that they are trained properly to be able to effectively perform their tasks as data collectors, if you're going to employ them as such, or validators, or simply as coordinators, or advanced party for data collectors. And if these are already part of the LGU, then provide additional remuneration. Otherwise, data quality might be affected because data collection or data validation tasks are add-on tasks to what they are doing. Fifth, develop performance indicators for the different members of the research team. For example, for uh, for the CBMS, the community-based monitoring system, enumerators conduct an average of 10 they accomplish 10 instruments a day on the average. But with data capturing device, in some areas, the average could be 12. In Naga City and Camarines Sur, with the use of smartphones and tablets, some were able to gather as 25. So there should be a target, and this should be depending on the context. As mentioned, rural areas and urban areas differ. But of course, ensure that the performance indicators are realistic. There are monitoring and validation systems in place, and if possible, reward to those who are certified performers. Again, we can take into consideration the committee-based monitoring system with the use of rapid technology or gadgets. In Matdog in Sorsogon, one enumerator could gather as much as 36 and accomplish 36 questionnaires in one day. And of course, this cost us a flag because that looks amazing and out of the ordinary. So we have to double check and found out that the area is a crowded community and the household respondents are very accommodating. So it took only around 12 to 26 minutes for every questionnaire that must be accomplished. So ensure that there are validation systems in place. Sixth, consider automation. For example, paper and pen surveys tend to be more expensive over time. When we look into the graph, the orange one is a phone-based questionnaire, while the blue one is for paper questionnaires. This data is from the rapid community-based monitoring system data enumeration. So there are actually 12 pages. One version of the CBMS has 12 pages. So the cost, of course, for the production of paper questionnaires is 12 pesos. And a gadget here, a smartphone, costs only 6,000 pesos. So over time, with respondents reaching at 500, the gadget and the paper questionnaires, the phone-based questionnaire and the paper-based questionnaire are equal. And when the number of respondents increased or above 500, the paper questionnaires become more expensive. Note that these costs does not include the costs of, for the paper questionnaires, the pens that will be used. And for the phone-based questionnaire, the charging of the device. So maybe we can consider automation. Aside from the fact that data audits become lesser because the rapid technology allows direct encoding, but at the same time ensuring checks on the responses. So the number of supervisors lessened, and the number of monitors lessened too. In the Philippine Statistics Authority surveys, particularly or in their census of population, the ratio of the supervisor to enumerators is usually 5. But with the use of rapid technology, because there are already checks in the system, in the program, the ratio is 1:10, and in some cases 1:15. That's the ratio for the supervisor and enumerators. 7, enter into partnerships with civil society organizations and the academia and capitalize on common interests. For example, the academe has research and extension activities. Maybe the LGU and the academe can enter into a MOA and maximize those activities as well as budgets. And also, students are required to complete internship or job practicum activities. Well, they can work with local government units, particularly in data gathering. This is what the National Anti-Poverty Commission and the local government unit of Bongao did some time ago when the LGU conducted CBMS. The Mindanao State University provided enumerators. The LGU provided the payments or remuneration for the enumerators, while the National Anti-Poverty Commission provided the gadgets. So the result was fast, and the data was considered to be of high quality. Ensure, however, that in partnerships with CSOs and academia, the research is not co-opted or politicized. Note that they also have other interests. 8, access local funds that will also benefit from the data gathering. For example, DRR funds or the Disaster Risk Reduction Management Funds, which accounts for 5% of the local government unit budget. The Gender and Development or GAD funds, also 5%. and fund for protection of children, which is 1%. Your funds are not only for disaster preparedness and response. They can also be used for data gathering, particularly for baseline data, to make their activities more effective. The GAD law also requires LGUs to be more gender responsive, and this can be done if there are baseline data available. So these funds, among others, can be utilized. So in review, our session one, we took stock of the data and the data available and the data gaps, and we discussed why LGUs need data. We had a short review of that one, and then the data inventory and the data gaps. For this session, we address resource-related challenges and concerns. We define the factors that, or we enumerated the factors that affects data gathering budget, the challenges that may impact the budget, and we provided some tips and strategies for addressing resource constraints, including the identification of possible sources of funds that the local government units can tap in their data gathering activities. Again, this is Jake Carizo. Thank you very much and good day.